So, Andy Holding, it's been 2 months. I think when we first started, the Irish racing was still going, so you had some income there. Didn't take long for it to all go as you predicted. How difficult has it been as a professional punter and writer for during this time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we thrive on a diet of regular racing, round the clock. Particularly this time of year now, we'd be getting stuck into sort of 7 or 8 meetings a day. So from that perspective, it's actually been quite nice to take your foot off the pedal, to sort of draw breath, spend time with young boy Edward, do the little things that you probably wouldn't have been able to do. Plenty of time to do that, so no excuses. But for a professional level, there's no denying that I have missed the action of the day in day out, looking at the racing, looking at videos, looking at times. I have been quite lucky though through my role through Oddschecker. They've provided me a platform to at least be able to do some content for them. I did a lot of research and previews for this forthcoming jump season. Obviously, we lost the jump season; it ended in March. So I was looking back at like the Cheltenham Festival and highlighting the best races there, doing previews for next season for the 2020. So I was doing all the big races, looking at towards the flat season, looking at 2,000, 1,000 guineas. So once that ended in April, I literally had nothing else more to write about. I'd exhausted all my avenues. But then luckily, the guy said, well, the French racing starts. Would you do a little bit of research on the French racing and just supply some content? So, albeit on a very small scale, the French racing has been a salvation for me in the sense I'm watching videos, I'm going through the rigmarole of looking at form and watching horses run, albeit I didn't know much about them. So at least that's kept my mental state going. Without that, I think I would have really struggled. So yeah, from that sense, I've been better off than others.
Did you get involved punting the French?
My worst thing that ever happened to me is I backed a 33-1 winner on the first day. A horse called the Summit, literally because I just thought it was overpriced and I watched his videos. And then it was a tale of woe for about the next 2 or 3 weeks, where unfortunately I was doing numbers and figures for the Paris-based tracks, the Saint-Cloud, the Longchamps, the Chantilly's of this world. So I got like the first week of real good solid database of times and form. But then of course the French government then backtracked and said that they weren't going to race it in the Paris-based tracks again, and they could race elsewhere. So all my sort of form, which I had in a bit of in a safe, as it were, I couldn't really use it because none of those horses were running at the smaller tracks like your Vichys and your Dieppes and all that. And it was only in the last week or so where they started to flourish again. So I've copped on a few winners in the last few days, but in between times it's very difficult without no numbers, without any tangible evidence to go on, which I thrive on. Being a figures man, it was very difficult just watching videos, and it kind of reinforced my theory that it's very difficult to make money back in horses without times and figures and something to stick on top of a race.
So what's the biggest difference you notice between French and UK racing?
Good point, Simon. Yeah, I think the biggest difference is pace. And I think it could be very difficult to make a good living out of backing horses in France, just because it's not over here where they go a genuine pace for most races. So your numbers tend to work out, they're a bit more reliable. In France, they tend to go very slow and they quicken up from sort of 2 out, 3 out. So most of them are sprint finishes. So when you're coming to do a card, majority of the out races end up being slow numbers. So someone who looks at races where they have very high numbers and good figures, I back horses at fast run races, it's almost the opposite in France. You need to look at horses who've got a good acceleration. And like I said, the fast run races are very few and far between, and those are the ones that do stand out. But there's not enough for me to make a long make it pay in the long term, I would have thought.
Okay, talking about making it pay, the UK racing's back behind closed doors. Are you going to be charging in, or are you going to be very cautious? What's your approach?
Yeah, very cautious. I wrote a piece on my article yesterday advising punters just not to go in all guns blazing, although it's very tempting. We haven't had a bet, we haven't had any action as such for about 3 months. So most punters are with twitchy thumbs have obviously wanted to get stuck in, and I can't wait for this moment to be upon them and get really have a go. But I think as we saw yesterday at Newcastle, it's very much a case in point that some horses, or a lot of horses, need to run. The surface is very dry, it's very demanding on horses, and I think that's going to be the theme for the next few days. By all means, have a bet, but cut your stakes down, have your interest, but just take it with a view of, it's a long season ahead of us, and I think this early first 2 or 3 weeks should be used as a stepping stone for your Royal Ascots and your derbies, and these bits of evidence I think will work themselves out. So just be patient.
So have you got a date where it is all systems go for you?
Probably Royal Ascot. I think we'll have enough, good 3 weeks worth of form working out to them, particularly the 2-year-olds. We're seeing a lot of the 2-year races. 4 today at Newcastle. There's, I think, 4 or 5 at Newmarket. Every day's got a 2-year-old programme based around, obviously, nominated horses for Royal Ascot. I think that's going to be important and an integral part of it. Which trainers are obviously going to be informed, which ones are firing. Obviously, they all want to do well, and they all want to, having a fallow period, hit the ground running. But there's obviously going to be yards and centres that are more forward than others. It's just natural. So the patterns will start to build out, and I think by the time we come to Royal Ascot, we'll get a good idea of where we stand. Excellent.
Well, thanks very much for getting back to us, Andy, and good luck for the forthcoming season.
Yeah.
And as always, nice talking to you.
Yeah, fingers crossed for everyone. I hope everyone has a good season.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, pal.
Cheers.